Hello, and welcome to We'll Tell You What We're Reading, our monthly YouTube show in which we tell you what we're reading. We are doing this a little differently, as you probably noticed. We are not streaming live. In fact, we are recording. In fact, we are recording the morning of the Red Sox Game 6 in Houston of the American League Championship Series. Hopefully, when you see this, there will be some good news. And if there isn't good news, hopefully this will cheer you up. Hopefully my lucky Nomar Garcia Parra jersey, spring training jersey that is from 2004 will bring them luck or use some cheer. Joining me are my colleagues, Louise Goldstein, Liz Rior, and Amber Harvey. And we are going to talk to you about our books today. As always, we would like to thank the Friends of the Waltham Public Library for sponsoring all of our programs at the library and for really providing so much of our virtual programming during the pandemic. Before we do start, I would like to share some of our book club meetings that we have been doing. We are meeting, this is our last book club meeting for the month of October, but we'll be meeting soon in November, and I'd like to share those meetings with you. So our next book club meeting, Amber will be leading the discussion on Saturday, November 6th for Their Eyes Were Watching God. On Monday, November 8th, you can have a chance to tell us what you're reading as you and us will share titles that we're reading. So like this, but not on YouTube. On Monday, November 15th, Louise will be co-leading a discussion with the Waltham Agape on Edwidge Dandicott's Create Dangerously. And then also 2 days later, Louise will be leading a discussion on Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. And last but not least, Greg will be leading a discussion on The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. We also will be premiering another We'll Tell You What We're Reading on YouTube Live. We will be premiering it on or before Monday, November 29th at 2:30 p.m. That will also be recorded ahead of time. So please stay tuned for that. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce my colleagues. We're going to tell you what they're reading. So first up is Liz.
It is October, which is my favorite month of the year. So I unsurprisingly have some creepy, weird, dark books to talk about, but not remotely as creepy and weird as dark as I normally go. So family friendly, Halloween, sort of ish, a little bit. All righty. Let's do the screen share. Okay, so my first book is Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is a novella. It's very short. You can read it in a night or two if you just want like a fun, creepy little Halloween book. So Chris is still in mourning 2 years after the death of her 21-year-old son, Trey. Every day after work, she visits the site of his death as a way to connect with her beloved child. During one visit, a drop of Chris's blood falls to the ground where Trey passed away. That night, Chris begins seeing and hearing Trey, not hallucinating him, actually seeing him. She makes the connection between her blood and the reappearance of her son, and slowly makes more and more extreme offerings to the spot of his death in an effort to bring him back permanently. But has Chris actually been seeing her son, or is something much older and sinister pretending to be her son? You're going to have to read this book to find out. Like I said, it's a great little novella for the Halloween season, but a trigger warning, there is a lot of self-mutilation and harm on the part of Chris as she gives literally pieces of herself to the earth to try to bring back her beloved son. My next book is The Sandman, Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes by Neil Gaiman. This is the first volume in the Sandman saga, which was originally published in 1989 through, I think, 1994. So here's my little description. It's the First World War, and an occult society has a single goal in mind: trap death so that no one ever has to die again. They perform an elaborate ritual, and to summon death, one of the endless, but instead of trapping their prey, they instead trap Death's brother, Dream, aka Morpheus, aka many other names that you have to learn over the course of this graphic novel saga. The occultist tracked Dream for 70 years until he is accidentally released and embarks on a quest to extract vengeance for being trapped for 70 years, rebuild his kingdom of Dream, and reclaim the artifacts that the occultists stole from him when he was originally summoned. This is actually being adapted into a TV show for Netflix, which is why I decided to reread it. I had read it years ago, but it is, so this is the first volume in this sprawling epic that has other DC characters in it, magic, occult lore, mythology, so much. And it's just great. It's like meeting an old friend because I've read it in the past, and I'm just so excited for the adaptation to be released. There's also an Audible adaptation, like an audio drama. Unfortunately, we can't get it through the library because it is only available on Audible, but it's really good. I'm listening to it now. My last book today is my new obsession, which you may have noticed over the last few programs. It's The Mushroom Fan Club by Elise Gravel. This book is so cute. It's for kids and is an introduction to not necessarily what mushrooms you can and can't eat in the wild, but how mushrooms grow, where to find them, the differences between different features of the mushrooms, and how to identify some basic mushrooms. And it is just so cute. The pictures in it are adorable. Like, all the little mushrooms have eyes and mouths, and it's just like, I want to get prints of the different mushrooms in here, just to like have on a wall. I just think they're adorable. And because it's meant for kids, it definitely says don't eat mushrooms you find on the ground. It's very clear in saying, don't eat these mushrooms. They're fun to look at and to maybe pick to like do a spore print to try to identify them, but do not eat them if you're not a trained professional. So those are my books for this month. I hope that you enjoyed them, and if you want to request any of them, let someone at the library know. And now I'm turning it over to my colleague, Louise.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. Cool. I'm going to be careful when I see those mushrooms not to eat them. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. Hold on 1 second while I find my slides. Actually, you guys, can we move over to Amber? I'm having a technical problem. I'm just going to introduce my lovely colleague, Amber, and I'll be right with you guys after Amber. Thank you.
It's one of those days for sure. So I will start. You may recognize these slides because my colleague is nice enough to always do the hard work and then share the slides with me. My first book is The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is a riveting read about a woman who finds herself facing a decision of whether to stay with her husband, whom she loves, or to admit she is, and has always been, in love with a friend whom she's known since childhood. Set on the Cape, the story fluctuates between present day and the past, and we get to see how Elle meets Jonas and Peter, and how the relationships have been formed throughout the years. Elle's past, like that of her mother's, is full of turbulence and dysfunction, and the reader should know that there are instances of sexual assault through this book. In the somewhat ambiguous ending, Elle does make her choice, although there is debate among readers, my book club included, about whom Elle chooses. So if you read this, we'll have to chat about it and see what you thought of the ending. The next book I'm going to talk about is Billy Summers by Stephen King. One of the reviews I read about this novel said it's about a good guy and a bad job, and that more or less sums it up. Billy Summers is a decorated Iraq war vet and the best sniper in the world. He agrees to take on one last job before riding off into the sunset of hitman retirement. More than just a one last job story, the novel switches gears about halfway through, and the focus changes slightly. The scene where things shift is really the only part of the story that seemed a bit contrived to me, But the second half of the story, although maybe not as tight as the first half, is still solid and kept me turning pages to see what would happen next. Although this is outside of King's supernatural realm, I think most Stephen King fans will enjoy this novel. There are some truly suspenseful moments in the book that had me on the edge of my seat, and I found the Easter eggs and moments when King's own musings come through endearing. This is actually the first Stephen King novel I've read in about 15 years, and I'm glad that I read it. My third book is The Meaning of Mariah Carey, written by Mariah Carey. When you think of Mariah Carey, what comes to mind? For me, my first thought is of riding in a car with my college roommate and being embarrassed to have been caught singing along to Always Be My Baby. I was a card-carrying member of the Flannel and Combat Boots book club. I was a card-carrying member of the Flannel and Combat Boots Club, and liking a pop song just was not cool. Some may also instantly picture the word diva. One of the best-selling artists in the world, Mariah Carey is the top female solo artist of all time and holds the record for the most #1 singles by a solo artist, by a female songwriter, and by a female producer. What you might not picture when you think of Mariah Carey is a little girl who lived in a shack on Long Island, wearing hand-me-downs and always looking a bit disheveled because her mom didn't know what to do with her hair. The story of Mariah's rise to stardom is truly fascinating. With her incredible voice, it's hard for me to picture her never not being famous. I highly recommend the audio version of this book, which is narrated by Mariah herself. The moments when she breaks into song or laughs are so natural, it seems as though you're having a private conversation with with Mariah herself. If you end up listening to this, which honestly is when I've been on a bit of a music bio kick on audio, and this is one of the best I've read or listened to, be sure to stick around for the thank yous at the end. She thanks every single one of her dogs, and it's amazing. And sorry, I'm on 2 screens here, so let me get that ready. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is called Lady Parts by Deborah Kopeikin. Sometimes I hear people say they love a book so much that they're going to give it to everyone they know. Well, if I ever have reason for giving you a gift, it very well may be this book. Divided into sections based on the serious illness she was battling at the time, Lady Parts is a memoir that is equal parts tragedy and comedy. More than just Deborah's story, however, this book is also a brutally honest look at access to healthcare in this country. Going through a divorce and receiving no child support, Deborah at times had to beg and plead to keep jobs she doesn't love in order to keep healthcare benefits. During the time she's working freelance while seeking full-time work, which in itself is no small feat for a single parent, she must navigate the world of COBRA and at times push off important tests and scans because she does not have adequate coverage and cannot afford to pay. This book is also a call to arms over the state of women's healthcare. For instance, did you know that if you need to have a hip or knee replaced today in 2021, the hip or knee you were given will have been designed for a man? Or how about the fact that hormone replacement therapy can alleviate just about every symptom of menopause, but most doctors still go by the flawed study that showed a link between HRT and breast cancer? This sounds heavy, and at times it is, but Deborah's story also has some truly laugh out loud moments. I encourage everyone, not just women, to read this book, but I will say, maybe don't start it while eating an egg first thing in the morning, and trust me on this one. And that's it. I will stop my share and then we will see if it's Louise or Laura going next.
Hi, I'm going to try it again, you guys. Thanks for your patience. If this doesn't work, I'm going to just show you my books. Okay. Let's see. All righty. Okay, let me just back this up. All right, thanks for your patience, guys. So the first book I want to talk about is Ruth Ozecki's book. This is called The Book of Form and Emptiness. And I just want to tell you that she is a Zen Buddhist priest as well as an amazing writer. And calling it The Book of Form and Emptiness, this has to do with the Heart Sutra that says form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And it has to do with sort of a Zen concept about like interbeing, like we all interbe. Nothing, we think of ourselves as an independent I, but that's not really true, right? We need air to function, and we need other people and connection. And this book is, it's an amazing book, first of all. It's rather a long read. It's like, I'm gonna just look at my book. It's over 500 pages. And I was sorry when it ended. That's how good it is. I was upset that it was over because it's a very creative novel. I would say it's kind of got a magical realism form to it. The characters in the book, for example, are a woman named Annabelle O. There's somebody who dies right at the beginning of this book. Her husband dies right at the beginning of the book. So he's a character who dies, and then her son, Benny O. But the other character in this book is the book that is telling Benny's story. And because of the death of Benny's father and Annabelle's husband, there's a lot of grief going on. And because of the grief, we are sort of dealing with how Annabelle deals with the grief, and then how Benny deals with the grief. And Annabelle sort of becomes a hoarder during this time. She's just hoarding things. She loves crafts, and she's thinking, oh, maybe I'll make a quilt out of Kenji, her husband, who died in a kind of a really fluky accident where he's hit by a truck. He's a little bit drunk, he's a little bit stoned, he's a jazz musician, and it's just kind of a fluky death. And so she wants to take pieces of his clothing and make a quilt, but they're just sort of like lying on her bed. And her job is to cut out newspaper articles with this group that she calls the Scissor Ladies, and they gather data about particular topics for people. But of course, the world being the world it is, the scissor method is kind of going out of being because everything's going online. So she ends up getting a computer station. Anyway, so she's having all this grief. She's working at home with this big computer station that she calls Command Central. And she's got bags and bags filled with all these articles that she's cutting and all this data. And the place is kind of becoming a mess. Meantime, Benny O's room is impeccably neat. No disorder whatsoever. So she's becoming a hoarder. She's filled with grief. Benny is starting to hear voices. The first voice he hears, he's hearing his dead father trying to talk to him. But then he starts hearing voices all over the place. Books make sounds, pens make sounds, scissors talk to him. So it's kind of getting to be a noisy mess. And of course, a school psychologist gets called in, and of course he gets diagnosed as being schizophrenic. But Ozeki is kind of playing with this idea and the sort of like, you're schizophrenic, you take pills and all that, because when he goes to the library, the voices quiet down. When he goes to this huge urban public library, and the books respect the library's hushed tones. So things get much quieter for him in the library. And he makes some interesting friends in the library, and the connection with the friends becomes healing. And also, when he was young, his mom used to take him to this particular public library, and they would go to the, quote, multicultural room, which after a renovation is part of the old library. And the children's librarian who did story time with him becomes an important character in this book. And it's sort of about their healing, and it's a little bit questioning about what hearing voices means, and the idea that even inanimate objects can maybe have a voice in a way. It's fascinating and wonderful, and it's not like any book I've ever read that I can think of. Okay, so this next book, I personally think this book is a hoot. It's kind of a parodic book. It's called Self-Care by Lee Stein. And I think what she's kind of talking about are like influencers, like you might see on Instagram, kind of influencers. And I think where she's coming from is that, I mean, she's got this website that these two women start. One of the women, Devin, is from money. She's from money and she's perfect. Like she looks perfect. She's got, apparently there's a condition called, I think it's called orthorexia, where you have an unhealthy focus on eating in a healthy way. So Devin has that. She only eats perfectly healthy things. And she's perfect and she meditates and she works out and everything's perfect. Whereas her partner, Marin, is not perfect. She likes to drink quite a bit and she eats unhealthy things and she's not from money. She has student loans that she has to pay. And the two partner and create this, this site called Ritual, and it's spelled RICHUAL, and it's a self-care website. But really, I think Stein is kind of parodying how a lot of these sites really become, you know, a marketplace. They're really selling products, right? They're supposed to be about self-care. And I think she had Glennon Doyle in mind a little bit with this. And the kind of self-care that she's sort of selling. And I think she noticed, the author Lee Stein noticed that Glennon Doyle, you know, somebody once wrote to her a question or a very personal thing on Instagram and there was no response. And she feels like sometimes people talking on the internet, on Instagram and these sorts of sites are kind of talking out into the void in a way and being sold all of these different products. She calls it the wellness industrial complex. This is not in the book, but this is in an interview with the author. And she calls it, not in the book, but in an interview with the author, the monetization of self-care. And I just thought that was a very interesting angle. And I guess she's talking about this site, which I was not familiar with, which is Goop. And I think it's Gwyneth Paltrow is one of the people, and how, you know, there are solutions for things. You know, it's like a consumerist form of wealth, self-care. Like the author Lee Stein says in an interview, what I'm really cynical about is the more consumerist forms of self-care. If you go on the Goop website, there are products for problems you didn't know you had. Like, I didn't know I needed to lighten my eyelids until I saw this eyelid brightening cream. And she says, once you become a role model on Instagram, you're already peddling something. The story is rather hilarious. And I was reading it, kind of trying to slow down because I didn't want the book to end. It's not that long a book, and I was just enjoying it so much. So I really recommend this. And my final title is called Thin Girls by Diana Clark. I do want to sort of give a trigger warning about this book. I think if somebody is struggling with anorexia or eating disorders, this goes heavy duty into eating disorder territory. And or if somebody's got a trauma history, you know, just tread lightly because we've got some trauma and dysfunction. I have to say, I love books like this. I find them comforting and interesting because Diana Clark, in an interview with her, she's gone through some of what she's talking about. I had a feeling she did because she wrote so intelligently. She creates these twin sisters, Lily and Rose, and they have rather neglectful parents. They really do. So they're starting out kind of badly. The mother is very self-absorbed, father's pretty self-absorbed. The mother ends up just leaving the family and sort of starts another family and is not particularly attentive to her girls. And the father's home and he's kind of drinking himself into a stupor a lot. So they're not starting off so well. The twins are very, very, very close to each other. They can actually feel each other's feelings and sort of taste if one is upset, the other can sort of feel it as well. And they sort of start to drift apart because Rose, one of the twins, becomes really friendly with one of the popular girls at school, Jemima, who they later call, I think she starts calling her Mim, I'm sorry, Mim later on. But I think the author is interested in people's nicknames because the name you're given, your sort of given name, might not really reflect you. And then you might end up with a nickname that's more who you are. And Mim becomes Jemima's nickname. But in any case, Rose is loving the attention on her from Jemima. And Jemima is also from a wealthy neglectful home where her parents are like always away. So not really giving her good attention either. And she likes being the queen bee, the popular one. And she's getting into dieting, right? She's finding diets in her mother's magazines and things like that. And so Rose starts dieting along with her to be in the popular group. And when Rose starts dieting, Lily starts eating. And during this book, Rose is in a place where she wants to be for anorexics, where she's just sort of maintaining enough to stay alive. But then her sister Lily is in a crisis. She's involved with a married man. And Rose realized she's going to have to get out of her institution to try to help her sister. It's a beautiful book. I love it. I think it's beautifully written, very worth reading. And with that, I will introduce my colleague, Laura.
Thank you, Louise. I was going to say, speak for yourself that you didn't know you needed whatever it was you said you didn't know you needed. I mean, doesn't everyone know that? Anyway, on that note, I'm going to share my screen and talk about my books. Okay, so my first book is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. And this is the third book set in her shared universe, starting with The Kiss Quotient. Anna's son is a professional violinist who finds herself in a bit of a playing rut, or really she hits a mental block with her playing. And on top of that, her longtime boyfriend has just suggested an open relationship. So she decides that she's going to get even by attempting to have a one-night stand with someone she meets on a dating app, and she meets Quan Deep. If that name sounds familiar to you, and you are already familiar with Helen Huang's books, Quan is the cousin of Michael, the hero from The Kiss Quotient, and is the brother of Kai, the hero from The Bride Test. So the physical part does start off pretty awkward between Quan and Anna, but it'll come as no surprise to any romance readers, the two to start to develop true feelings for each other. And while this book does employ several romance tropes, there's actually a lot going on here, and I feel like the romance is just part of it. And Anna's slow realization and really acceptance of the fact that she is on the autism spectrum, something her family doesn't quite accept or understand, and Quan's very gentle understanding are written in such a relatable way. If you read romances, you will know I'm not spoiling anything by saying that, yes, there is a happily ever after, or HEA, as we say in the romance biz, but unusually, not everything is tied up in a neat bow at the end. I'm not going to go into details what I mean by that, but I really appreciated that. And I've read all three of the books in the Kiss Quotient universe, and this was actually my favorite one. I actually just loaned it to Liz, so I'll be curious what Liz's thoughts are after she reads it, not to call you out there, but this is the only one that is written in first person, alternating viewpoints, and I highly recommend reading Helen Huang's afterword about it and why this book was so personal to her. And she even talks a lot about the importance of writing this during the pandemic, which I thought was very interesting. Very much loved The Heart Principle. All right, my next book is The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Zio Axelrod. If you like novels about the inner workings of the music industry and strong female friendships with a bit of a romance thrown in, this is the book for you. Antonia, nicknamed Toni Bennett, yes, that is her real name, had a bit of a difficult childhood. She was raised first by her musician mother, who really cared more about her own career, and later had Toni move in with her father, who she really didn't know until she was 12 years old. He is a bar-owning musician wannabe father and seemed to consider her a burden. Toni's childhood best friend Seb, that's S-E-B, left their small town without her to her chagrin, and she was later determined to strike it out on her own. Fast forward several years later, Toni is living and playing in a small club in Philadelphia, where one thing leads to another, and she ends up filling in as the fourth member of the fictional band called the Lilies, whose manager surprise, surprise, does turn out to be Seb. Though I thought the relationship between Tony and Seb was fine and actually kind of hot in some cases, the real love story, honestly, is the burgeoning relationship between Tony and her new bandmates, Tiff, Kayla, and Lily. Like with the heart principle, I also appreciate the fact that not everything that Tony experiences gets resolved. If you liked detailed books with large descriptions of behind the scenes in the music world, as well as a strong sense of place, as Philadelphia is almost another character in the novel, I highly recommend. And again, the side characters in this book are so well developed. I'm a big romance reader, if you haven't figured that out by now, but sometimes the side characters in those books really are just character tropes, and I did not feel that was the case with this book. So read The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes. And my last book is No Land to Light On by Yara Squeeb. This book is set to be published in January, and I was lucky to have an advanced reader copy at my disposal. I read this book in 2 days, in fact, fewer than 2 days. I think it was more like 36 hours. I could not put it down. It takes place in Boston, mainly in the immediate aftermath of the Muslim travel ban in early 2017. It's heartbreaking and beautifully written. When Hadi is returning to Boston from visiting with his parents in Syria, he's not allowed to leave Logan Airport. Instead, finds himself on a plane bound for Jordan. His wife Sama, meanwhile, who's pregnant, is at the airport and ends up going into premature labor, not knowing what's happened to her husband. The book goes back and forth between Sama and Hadi's first-person points of view in the present day, that is early 2017, and third-person points of view as they both start their residence in the United States years earlier. The detail in this book and descriptions are exceptionally beautiful and lyrical, and I hope you'll all get a chance to read it. You can put a hold on it now in our catalog, even though it has not been published yet. I don't know if you all know you can do that. You can always put holds on books that have not been published yet. So I always recommend doing that if you want to get it early. And I believe this is going to be available in Overdrive as well. It's hopefully it's both an ebook and an audiobook. I'm hoping so. So please put a hold on that. And again, there's a lot of local flavor, especially for those who are familiar with Harvard Square in the Cambridge area, as Sama is affiliated with Harvard. So definitely recommend. And there is actually a lot of bird imagery as well, as you can probably tell by this cover. So for those who are bird enthusiasts, you will have something to like here. So those are my books. And now we're going to go into gallery view and see if anyone wants to talk about a show that they've been watching or a movie they've seen. Amber, you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
We just recently watched Midnight Mass. Have any of you watched it? Liz, have you seen this yet? I need someone to watch this.
It's on my to-watch list, yeah.
Okay. I really want to talk about it with someone. I didn't know, I don't think I knew anything about this show going into it, other than I read a review or someone told me something about it. And then my husband was like, oh, do you want to watch this show? And so, I mean, I was hooked immediately. It's not something, it's hard to talk about because I don't want to say any spoilers at all. It's not something I would typically watch. It's short, seven episodes, by the same director as, I just lost it. He did The Haunting of Hill House. Is that the right title? The Haunting of Hill House. And another one that another coworker told me to watch, which I probably will now. So this is by that same director, and it is the 6th episode in particular is extremely hard to watch, but it's really good. But we could do a whole episode just on this show, I think.
I am curious. I feel like that comes up a lot. I was at a meeting yesterday, actually, where as an icebreaker, everyone had said a TV show they're watching, and Midnight Mass, I think, came up multiple times. That and Squid Game, which I also haven't seen yet. And Midnight Mass, I am a little intrigued because it has 80s, I don't know if I call her an icon, but Annabeth Gish, right? Mystic
I did not
Pizza.
know it was her. I didn't know until the very end, and I saw her name in the credits, and I was like, Annabeth Gish, who is she? I was floored. Yes, same thing. I apparently haven't seen her since Mystic Pizza.
I mean, I've seen her. She was in the X-Files the last 2 seasons. Agent Reyes, Monica Reyes, who sort of a divisive character in the X-Files. I liked her. Not everyone did, but she was in the revival where they actually did her character dirty, but that's a whole, you could do a whole show about that. But yeah, I don't know if I recommend, but I do love her. I love Mystic Pizza, as I think Amber, you and I have discussed Mystic Pizza several times. So she is my gateway. She's the one reason I may watch it, even though it's not my genre. Anyone else have some shows? I have a couple, but I definitely want to give other people a chance first.
I have a movie to talk about. Last night I saw the adaptation of Dune, and Dune is my favorite book of all time. I read it once a year, generally speaking. And like, I have this dog-eared paperback copy with like notes in it because I'm just obsessed with Dune. Like, I love it. So my senior quote was from Dune. So there's this really dorky picture of me in full high school goth wear with this Dune quote underneath it. It's so embarrassing. Please don't look up where I went to high school. I saw the movie. It was great, visually stunning. Acting was okay. There were a few moments where I was like, come on, man, like that's your best acting job, but to each their own. I will say, if you have not read the book Dune or the Wikipedia article about Dune, maybe do that before you go into this film, because it is very dense. Not a lot of things are like explained explicitly, where it's like, here is a thing, this is its significance, this is why we are using it. It's more just like you have to like watch and pick up on things. But yeah, I just loved it. I can't wait for part 2. I'm gonna watch it again. You can watch it on HBO Max if you're not comfortable going to a theater yet. I did see it in a theater because I wanted like the huge IMAX screen, because it's such a massive, sprawling, like visual journey. Anyways, I love Dune. I wish Greg was on this episode so he and I could talk about it, but I'm just gonna have to find him in the break room later. So yeah, that was my big exciting thing.
Thank you, Liz. We were talking about Dune actually at the meeting I was referencing earlier, and Greg was actually at that meeting. He had not, or I think at that point had not seen it, the new one. My only exposure to Dune is the David Lynch movie, which I've only seen parts of because it's pretty much one of the most famous bad movies of my childhood. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's not good. It's not great. It's not Lynch's best work, but it is kind of amazing.
I do recommend, if anyone knows the show Honest Trailers on YouTube, I do recommend, they just did an honest trailer of the David Lynch film, and it is hilarious. Even if you haven't seen the movie in its entirety, I think I watched it 3 times. I couldn't stop laughing. So, and obviously the Boston Globe review of the new movie, I didn't read the whole thing, but the headline also is pretty funny. I don't even want to, just look it up on bostonglobe.com. If you're not a Globe subscriber, you can read, I think, 10 articles for free on their website. The headline's hysterical. And it made me kind of want to see the new movie, knowing pretty much, I know Spice, the blue eye thing, Arrakis, and 8,000 years in the future. That's pretty much what I know.
There's like a couple more things about the book, but that pretty much sums it up. Yeah. I just want to warn everyone watching this, in the Lynch adaptation, there is a pug. There is no pug in the new adaptation, unfortunately. So if you were really rooting for that space pug to show up again, you will be very disappointed. But other than that, it's amazing, and you should see it. And you should tell me, we should talk about Dune. Find me at the library and we'll talk about Dune. It's going to be so great.
Well, that's actually a good segue into I have 2 shows. One is, so I was going to say, speaking of, I believe, the 1984 Dune, it has something slightly in common with the show I've been watching, which is Only Murders in the Building on Hulu. It just ended this week, but they were dropping an episode week to week. So I wanted to binge watch it. So I waited till all 10 episodes had been broadcast so I could just watch them straight, because they've been a good respite for the last 2 Red Sox games, because those were heartbreaking. And Sting is in both the 84 Dune. Am I right about that, Liz? Isn't he in Dune? And he is surprisingly in this show playing himself. I won't go into too many details about that. That surprised me. Basically, for those who are not familiar with this show, it stars Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, and Martin Short as residents in a co-op or a condominium in New York City. And basically one of the residents turns up dead in an apparent suicide, but they are convinced he's murdered. And the three of them basically on their own try to solve the case. They are obsessed with true crime podcasts. And although the show is about murder, it's actually, I would say, parody or dark comedy about murder, much along in the vein of like Clue or Murder by Death or any of those. And the send up it does of, frankly, the true crime obsession that people have and podcasts in general is spot on. I mean, I'm not a true crime person, and even I really enjoyed Serial. If those who are sort of the one who started that all, I think. I mean, the music of this show is basically Serial's theme. I mean, it's not technically, but it's very obviously based on the Serial theme. Tina Fey, who sometimes I like, some they don't, does have plays us like basically the Sarah Koenig role from Serial, and she's actually pretty funny. I feel like she has her mannerisms down. But Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez have really great chemistry. I really like Selena Gomez in this. I did watch Wizards of Waverly Place, even though I was way too old for that show, and I don't have children. But it was back when I was a teen librarian and a children's librarian, so it was for work. I had to relate to the kids I was working with. So I have been familiar with her for a while, and I have to say she's a good comedian. She, considering I knew her more as a child actress, and she more than holds her own with the vets, Martin and Short. So there is Martin Short. I will say one more thing before I move on. Martin Short plays a Broadway producer, or an off Broadway producer, as he likes to say. And he did a musical version of a 1980s movie, which apparently was a disaster, but I really wish this existed. And I hope now some actual producer in real life now makes this play, because I want to see it, because it sounds fantastically terrible. And the second one I want to mention is I just watched season 2 on Netflix, which you can get Netflix from our Roku's at the library, of The Babysitter's Club. I was a huge fan of the books back in the day. I remember when they came out. That's how old I am. I was originally a year younger than The Babysitter's Club for actually 2 years, because they did age once. People don't remember that. They actually were in 7th grade when the book started. First 5 books, and then they became in 8th grade, and then they stayed there for 20 years. So I literally went from being a year younger to being their age to being old enough to be their mother. And the show is lovely. I think they did a really good job at adapting it for 2021. I think some of the stuff that when you look back and look at the books now, you're like, that's ridiculous. I think they really either made fun of it well, or they basically just changed it. I really love the relationship between Marianne and her father. Marianne was not my favorite character in the books, and I really like her in the series. And her dad is just great. He's played by the same actor who plays Sean in The Good Place and who played Kevin in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, for those who watch that show. And he was perfect as Marianne's dad. Yeah, it's a really sweet show. It's lovely, and I really like it. And I like the fact that they actually look, I think they are a little older than the age we're playing, but they're not 25-year-olds playing 14-year-olds, and I appreciate that. So any other thoughts about anything anyone said so far, or any other shows? No one else here is watching Only Murders in the Building? Oh no, someone needs to watch that. It's so fun. It's
I thought it was a movie, so I'm really out of it.
It's a show. It's 10 episodes, about 35 minutes each, which is also great because just long enough that maintains your interest, but not super long. So I think every show should be 35 minutes. I was gonna say new law. So anyway, that is it. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you enjoy. We hope you enjoy our new recorded comment. In our comments, please include what you've been reading, and we will engage back with you. And enjoy the rest of your day. And go Red Sox! Woo! All right, to the same way, everyone.